We live to rock. We love this music. We like seeing the crowd. We truly live to rock. I am the pod of thunder, Matisse Van Rossum.
Oi, mate! I'm Australian Ben Sheets!
And I just showed up at 2 a.m, unexpectedly, because that's a normal thing to do. I'm Cleveland Mosier.
Showed up at 2 a.m. looking for something ambiguous.
And in the words of our movie, we accept the challenge. We have a special guest this week, Janette Valentine. She wanted to cover this enigma of a movie, Rock and Roll Nightmare. We're happy to have her on.
Yes, thank you for joining us, Janette.
Indeed.
Absolutely. My pleasure. And I'm very sorry that you had to watch this.
Don't apologize. No. Don't apologize because we've got a hell of an episode. We are talking about Rock and Roll Nightmare, which is a 1987 film directed by John Fasano and starring John Micklethor and others. It is about a hair metal band that goes to a remote farmhouse / recording studio to record their new album, their magnum opus, but it turns out the devil lives there or something.
That's about right.
The devil does live there, absolutely. And the plot twist is well, you saw the plot twist, and that kind of like brings everything together.
Yes, and we will definitely get around to that because that's where the bulk of what I have to say comes in.
There's a lot of unpacking.
Yeah, well, the movie starts in such a bizarre fashion. It starts with this family. They're having breakfast at their house, and suddenly there's a corpse in the oven.
Yeah.
Yes. Same model as my grandmother's oven.
And there's really no mention as to what happened, and then it's one of I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm sure that there might be a reasonable explanation. I thought, does this allude to like his childhood? Is this supposed to be?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be him as a kid,
because we see the kid as a demon later on.
Yeah, it's not. It's just, I think, supposed to be the standard horror movie cold open where somebody gets killed to establish the threat.
Or in this case, a hot open.
Oh, you stop.
I won't.
The mom is like downstairs calling for the family to come down for breakfast, and she like hears something outside, and we see her leave, and then when the kid comes down, she's in the oven.
Yes, and then I think her husband is shaving. Oh, I don't know if you noticed that he didn't have any facial hair.
I actually didn't.
I watched it a few times too.
Wow. So much to...
Yeah, no facial hair. Obviously something is evil, and I think in the refrigerator, and then all of a sudden it's like there's a skeletal figure, some crazy skeleton in the oven.
The skeleton still has eyeballs, though.
Yeah.
You already know that you're in for a wild ride.
Yeah, to say the least. Well, after that, we get like 4 minutes of like what seems like Roomba cam as we like track across the ground all over the house. At one point, the camera literally goes in circles.
It just spins around on an axis.
Yeah, someone saw Evil Dead
baffling.
and got a little too excited, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The height of the shot, I mean, it would allude to what we're going to talk about later.
Yes.
That is
Definitely.
explained, unlike many other
things
things.
that appear later that you're like, what the hell was that?
Yeah. Before we get too heavily into the plot, Janette, since this was your suggestion, your curation, why don't you tell us a little bit about your relationship with this movie? When did you first see it? What has brought you back to it? Why did you want us to talk about it?
I stumbled upon Rock and Roll Nightmare. I bought a VHS tape from a friend, and then he's like, this is really right up your alley. And I thought, okay, the cover is very promising. And then I see this like huge like Viking god-like figure on the cover, and he's bare-chested, and you know, it's very rock and roll, and it's very nightmare. You really have no idea. But anyway, I watched it once, And then I made my friends watch it, and then I made my friends watch it again, and then I had to watch it again, and then I was just stumped. And it's still one of my favorites for many reasons. It's like my October go-to immediately because, you know, it's like it ties into, I love like heavy metal, horror, and like all of that cheese, you know. So the movie was the movie. I understood that, but then I was very curious about John Michael Thor because I thought, okay, this guy wrote the screenplay, he produced it. It's obviously all of his songs that are being heard throughout the entire movie.
Oh, what songs, too? We live for rock and roll.
Yeah,
truly. It's like a vanity project almost, or it is a vanity project. And then at the time, I was very obsessed with The Room. This is many years ago when a friend of mine had told me about The Room playing in art house cinemas in California, and all the stuff was going on with like Tommy Wiseau. And to me, I correlated John Michael Thor with my, you know, relationship with The Room, their vanity project. It's all there. It's written by, produced by, and there's a lot of them in it mostly, and it's almost like, geez. So I became obsessed with John Michael Thor, and then I realized that John Michael Thor had a musical career. So he was a Canadian metal god per se, and he had these crazy, I don't know if you've read up on John Michael Thor, have you seen anything, but I'm going to send you some. You have to watch this documentary, I Am Thor. There's anthology. The anthology spans like 1985 to like 1996 or something like that. Anyway, so he is quite the curious character, and I found him to be, you know, I like bad things. It's not like, well, what is wrong with this guy? This guy's amazing. I love this guy. So he used to bend steel and like, you know, carry bricks and all this crazy stuff. And, you know, he was a Chippendale dancer kind of dude. He did acting, and then he had this rock career. He was a bodybuilder. Professional bodybuilder.
Yeah, I saw he's won something like over 40 bodybuilding championships. Like,
I mean, the man is a golden god.
Yeah, he's definitely, like, Tommy Wiseau is a great analogy. He's definitely the same kind of figure who has like his fingers in all of the pies and does everything to the elevation of his own ego.
Oh, yeah, a truly baffling enigma.
Like, really, all that's missing from this movie is his direction. You know, like, he wrote the screenplay, he's in it, it's all his music, but it's directed by somebody else.
So,
exactly.
So, Janette, would you consider yourself an expert on Michael Thor deep lore? What would you say?
An expert? Well, not really, but I mean, probably very close. Definitely obsessed.
I can understand the appeal. He's a very enigmatic figure, bafflingly bad at everything he does, but somehow still completely magnetic.
Well, he's always earnestly giving it 100%.
I would not complain, and I would not be sad if there was a John Michael Thor reality show.
Oh, yeah.
That would not be a bad thing.
I mean, I think he's still alive, right? So there's time.
Yeah, we can wheel him out.
Yeah, you gotta watch the documentary. There's so much, and it's endearing towards the end. He pushed for very long, and, you know, you would think that he would have had the notoriety that he thought that, you know, he probably had. And people in Europe were showing up to his shows, and, you know, very loyal audience, which is awesome. And he really pushed through. I mean, the documentary about him just really points to the fact that he does not give up, and he really believes in what the fuck he's doing.
I mean, I think you have to. This movie is a fantastic example of one of those things where you look at it and you say, how did people think this was all right? Like, how did people get this shot, look at it, and be like, yeah, that's good. We don't need to do it again.
Yeah, or hear that dialogue and think it makes sense.
It's
like that humans talk that way. It's amazing.
It's born out of complete sincerity. And something that I found really interesting as well on the subject of him and his music is in the opening credits, it says that music by the Tritons. And his character's name in the movie is John Triton.
John Triton.
But the Tritons are not actually a band.
Well, they're the band in the
They're the band.
movie.
They're the band in the movie. But like,
Which aren't really actually playing instruments anyway.
right, exactly. So they try to play it off like the band in the movie was the one who made all of the music, but it's actually John Thor's actual band called Thor, and it's very confusing.
Yeah.
I support that. I think that's great.
Confusing. Something that you learn about him, which ties into what you were just saying about the band. When I watched I Am Thor, there's a scene. Well, you realize he's going on this tour. He's promoting himself. He has like this comeback, whatever. And basically, he finds these musicians online, and they're having practice sessions from a hotel room. And like he didn't even rent like a proper like rehearsal space, and they're gonna go play a festival, let's say, and like they're practicing in a hotel room, like unplugged. And these people have never met each other, and it's like, oh my god, dude, just get a room, get a proper area for practice.
Well, his idea of a proper recording space is a farmhouse. In fairness,
Yeah.
so it's like a half step up from a motel, really.
The whole sequence when they get to the farmhouse and all the dialogue there where they're talking about how
The dialogue that you can hear. Most of the
Yeah.
dialogue in the film is mixed far too low.
That's
I like your theory, Tease,
Very
about
funny
that.
parts of it. For a movie so focused on music, the mixing in this movie is all over the
Yeah.
place.
You have to turn the volume up all the way.
And-
the music gets loud, and then the actual the actors are like barely audible.
Yeah, almost always. They're always mixed below the music, and I would say probably a good 60-70% of the dialogue in this film is completely incomprehensible. You cannot hear what they're saying.
Well, Tease, you had an excellent theory about that because their footsteps were extremely loud.
In that one particular scene, yeah, I think they're putting the mic on the ground.
They just dropped it. They're like, screw the mic.
Because in the scene where the groupies show up at 2 a.m. and go
yeah.
knock on the door,
Oh, jeez.
like, you can barely hear what they're saying, but their footsteps are so loud. They're just clip-clopping all over the place like goddamn horses. And the only way you're going to get that is if they just have the mic on the ground.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't have a sound guy or something. They couldn't get a boom, so they said, fuck it, we'll just put the mic on the ground. Just talk
Put
real
it on the ground.
Yeah.
One thing that I wanted to point out, which is one of the most, awful parts of the movie, which is just, it's a sign of the time, when the groupies show up initially, one of them says, "What am I, a retard?"
Oh, yeah.
When's the last time you heard that?
Yeah, I mean,
Seriously, like,
it's an 80s
that's
movie for sure.
Yes.
The whole scene with the groupies is just bizarre.
They show up completely uninvited at 2 a.m., go knock on the door.
Because like one of them, like their mom's a realtor or something, so they
who's been
found
trying
out.
to sell that. Yeah, they found out that the band is staying there. They show up
I
at
love
2
the movie. Like needed us to know that. Like that's so good.
yeah.
Right. They show up at 2 a.m. and it's like, what could they possibly want other than to like fuck the band? They're there in the middle of the night, uninvited, right? And then the manager lets them in, and one of the first things he says to them is, "It's 2 a.m. The band will be down in 20 minutes.
Why? We never know."
Now let's see those breasts."
Yeah, booze. And it's like, why are you here? Why did you come here? And then it's funny because they didn't actually show their boobs.
No. Well, as soon as he suggests that, they act extremely indignant, like, "Oh my God, how could you?" But at the same time, like, why were you there uninvited at 2
Why
a.m.?
did you show up at 2 a.m. to hang out with a band? I mean,
And then they leave.
whether it's 1985 or 2005, or 2019, you're gonna, it's just one of those things. So they actually didn't show their boobs, and apparently there wasn't a budget for that. Well, the movie was directed by John Fasano. I'm sure you saw that.
Yeah.
And apparently those were John Fasano's friends. And so he wound up giving the actresses that were already cast in the movie extra money, like $100, to show their boobs. So basically the actual cast in the movie showed their boobs, but then those 4 girls or groupies that you'd assume would show the boobies, they were friends, so they just didn't do it, and there was nothing. Like, that was all. So, yeah, the movie was made on a budget of like $50,000.
I believe the fuck out of that.
Checks out.
I mean,
That checks out.
They got their mileage worth with the practicals and the puppetry. I'll give it that.
Well,
For
I
sure.
mean, we'll just say that the film is mostly filler, including that scene with the groupies.
It was unnecessary.
They leave.
Yes.
They're not even kills. Like, they don't die. They talk to the manager, and then they get right back in their van and they leave. There's literally no point
yeah,
for
and we
the
get
scene at all.
the truly bizarre shot of the demon manager.
Yeah.
Where he's given the weird, almost like Tim Heidecker, Tim and Eric
Yeah.
face with the demon hand there.
It's free real estate. So that's like, you get to see like the realness of, the manager. And then like from the beginning, he was very like 80s movie guy, like Ducky and Pretty in Pink, like he's got his little earring and like he's just like a very like, I'll do the dishes, I'll do all the cooking, kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden he just turns into like, show your tits.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, because he gets possessed, so he becomes evil.
At this point, yeah.
You make a good point, Tease, with talk about how much filler there is in this movie.
Yes.
The opening sequence of this movie, we get a solid like 6 or 7 minutes of the van driving to the house.
It's 3 minutes and 34 seconds.
Oh, thank you.
Nice.
Exactly. Thank you for timing it. It almost felt like
It
What a
felt
the
professional.
scene
so much
in Monty
longer.
Python where they're running towards the castle, because every
Yeah.
time it cut away from the van, we were like, oh, they're finally getting there. And then it just cut to like the van again and again and again.
Well, we read on IMDb after watching the movie that the original cut of the movie was 10 minutes under length, and in its current cut it's only 80 minutes, so it's already not a long movie. But because it was too short, they then went back and recorded all of that footage of the van driving, literally to fill out their runtime.
Oh my gosh, and it makes sense. Completely pointless. And I don't know if you remember, John is in the van, and he looks like he's having a conversation with someone, because he motions with his hands. He's talking to someone. And that van ride was completely solo. There was not a single person in the van. You
Right.
would assume that the entire band would have been in the van.
Yeah, we never, in a normal film, that would be the place where we get like our setup exposition introduced to all of the characters, them shooting the shit in the van. We start to get to know them before they get to their
Talk
location.
about where they're going.
Right. But because it was
That would've
filmed,
been smart.
it was just him in the van by himself.
Ridiculous.
So
And
we get
then
all
just
of that
playing
exposition
music.
right when they get to the house instead.
Right.
Right, and of course, that whole time they're driving in the van, like they have plenty of opportunities as characters to understand where they're going and what's going on. But no, the movie doesn't. And so when the characters do get all get out of the van,
They're like,
they start
where are
asking
we? What's going on?
all the questions that there's no doubt they would have already had established by this point. Like,
But that would have made too much sense, you guys.
Yeah, you're right.
so you're
I
trying.
mean, what's the point in that?
Well, I love they say this place has been uninhabited for 10 years, but it's also a music studio that Alice Cooper has
Or
used.
Alice Blooper
Alice
and
Blooper.
Blob Stewart.
Todd Stewart.
24-track recording studio. You're going to record a song. You're going to record a record in 2 weeks?
Yeah, they say they're there. He tells them they're there for like, welcome to your home for the next 5 weeks. And then 2 minutes later, one of the girls is like, how long do we have to be in this dump anyway? It's like, bitch, we just told you.
Yeah, I guess the fact that the movie was recorded in like 7 days would explain it.
Yes, I did see
The
that.
whole timeline is like thrown off completely.
How long have we been here? 2 months? 3 weeks? Help me to recollect.
I love that it's supposed to be like this secluded, like...
I was gonna say.
Right, but in all of the establishing shots of the house, you can just see the highway right there. You just see cars.
It's an abandoned farmhouse, yet there's traffic, and it's not secluded. That's crazy. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
The drummer takes the person away, and she asks him, "How'd you know about this place?" And they're 5 feet from the house.
To the lake out back.
Yeah.
She's like, "How'd you know about this place?"
Like, you can see it from the window.
We literally, there's literally a shot of you walking all the way from the house, an uninterrupted shot.
It was established.
Through an empty field, like.
Which, speaking of, this film loves that. Like, it's a pretty common, like, hallmark among, like, amateur films where, like, the movie has to show you how the characters get from A to B.
Right.
We can't just cut to the next location and understand that that's just a new place that they're at. We have to see them get out of the house and walk over to the recording studio, or get out of the house and walk over to the lake, and we watch them walk in and then out of the shot too many times.
I don't know if you remember when Back to the Eternal Van scene. The vanity tag on the van says Dunker.
Yes!
Yeah.
Oh, that was awesome.
And also, it's very clearly an Ontario license plate, and they're supposed to be like from the United States coming to Canada to like get away. But it's like that, like the plates on the van are Ontario. and also, they're all being like, "Hey guys, we should get out of here."
Exactly. And then during, that eternal part, you would think that, I mean, it seems like the notion of atmosphere was there. Obviously, it didn't work out, but like there's the music starts to change, and you have that like the metal kind of like Motley Crue music, and then you hear like the synthy stuff, which is interesting because then it's just like a shift. And then it's like, okay, so what's going on? We're building atmosphere. And then it's a lot of that. And then he's just driving, and then you just get there. So then nothing really gets beyond that point.
No.
And then you have all these like shots of like trees and stuff, and like, okay, something bad's gonna happen because there's shots of trees and branches.
Well, right, they break up the van scene with like one exterior of the house where they do like a contra zoom and play like spooky music. It's like, ooh, the spooky house. But there's like after that, any pretense of atmosphere in the movie is just completely thrown out the window. And I'm glad you bring up the constant metal music as well, because it becomes really difficult throughout most of the film to determine when the music is diegetic and when it's not. Like, you think it's just a soundtrack, and then they'll cut and you'll hear the music coming from another room, and then there's where he's like sitting on the bed playing his guitar, and it sounds like we're hearing what he's playing,
And then he puts the guitar down.
and the music keeps going.
When he puts the guitar down, that's amazing.
It's like, what?
And then you have the wah, wah.
Yes.
The shitty Casio wah sound, which is awesome. And then that's when you know something fucked up is going to happen, pretty much. It's like, so his music or the wah. That's it.
or sometimes both.
Yeah.
There was that one sequence, but I think it's between one of the shower sex sequences during that whole chunk of the film, where
The shower.
the score starts to transition from synthy to a rock song, or vice versa.
Well, it's when his girlfriend is washing the dishes and 2 tracks are playing at once.
Yeah, they just leave it for like a good 30 seconds to a minute. We're just stuck with 2 tracks playing.
Yeah.
Weird.
And then for some reason, they like to do the dishes a lot.
Yes, they do.
They're always doing dishes, and there's always stuff going on, and there's always dishes.
It's always the girlfriends, because we have to continually establish that they're good domestic women who are cleaning up while the real men do they're living for rock.
Truly, we live for rock, as the lyrics would say. I have to say, they're dancing to the music as well.
Boy.
It's truly one of a kind.
Oh boy.
Man, so good.
Like so well choreographed, those sequences.
Yeah, so
Amazing.
good. His outfits, like there's always a gratuitous like boob shot from Thor. Like his boobs take center stage in this movie. Like
Oh,
he's all
truly.
about
Oh, yeah.
They're just popping out of all of his blouses.
I love his red blouse.
deep cut, deep V-neck, like kind of like here's my titties.
Yeah, that fucking broke me when Cleveland was just like, nice blouse, dude.
Blouse. Now that we're on the subject of Thor's amazing boobs, the shower scene that never ended, and then it was like boob on boob. It was just like
That scene went on for much too long.
And it was made longer by the fact that it's immediately preceded by another lengthy sex scene.
Two. Because
It's
there's three couples.
the first one is when they're out at the lake and like with the fake
hand,
Australian
yeah.
dude, and the hand comes out of his chest
fake Australian dude.
and attacks his girlfriend. And then we go to the extremely long sex scene between the guitar player and the keyboard chick. That whole time I was just saying, please end this, please. It's gone on for long enough, please. And then it finally ends and cuts to fucking Thor and his girlfriend, who immediately get in the shower and start I
They don't
loosely
do much. They don't even have sex. They just rub boobs, I guess.
right, yeah,
in the lowest water pressure shower
Quote-
of all time.
quote unquote sex scene. Yeah.
Just stoked on his boobs, and this brings me back to Tommy. Tommy was so in
Yes,
the room that
Yes.
crazy fucking sex scene where you're just like, stop. And again, it's all about Tommy's ass.
Yep.
And in this movie, it was all about John's tits.
Very true.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And I'll give them. They are splendid boobs. They are splendid man
They're
boobs.
truly a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
And
I
support
he really gets a chance
Wholeheartedly.
to show them off in the climax too. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that's really what the whole film
I mean,
is building to.
Climax is definitely the right word. I have to say.
Climax, yeah.
Speaking of the backing vocalist, there's a bit where she's talking to one of the other bandmates before he falls asleep, and she mentions how she really feels like she's singing her soul out on stage. And in the previous scene, we see her singing, but she's completely undercut, and you can't hear her
Yeah, you
at
can
all.
never ever hear her vocals.
It's like, like she's singing her soul out, but no one's hearing. they've just turned her levels down.
Man,
Oh, man.
those rehearsal scenes, which are basically just music videos, are fucking ridiculous. The lyrics that John writes. My man
He's truly a wordsmith.
my man said, energy. You give you take
Energy, take me where I
yeah,
wanna
you takes me where I want to be.
Energy. Just over and over again.
Yes.
And then there's what is it? We Live to Rock.
Yes.
And we do. We do live to rock.
Truly.
It's all the good stuff. This is kind of what rock and roll is, right? You just live to rock.
Yeah, you
And
know,
live
this
to
is-
be
this is
bored,
it.
and you push, and there's something to be said about his tenacity.
Sex,
That's
drugs,
a-
and demon
It's
Muppets.
It's a good word for
That's
it.
what we're here for.
Say what you want about John, but you can never say that he does not live to rock.
Oh
You
man,
can't-
he'll die for rock.
He will, yes.
It's so clear throughout the movie, and I've met people. As a photographer, I photographed a lot of bands, and I photographed a band many years ago. And the lead singer of the band reminds me so much of John. And it was that whole, like, I'm going to create a band that aren't really like my musicians that I play with. Like, we're not really a band, they're like hired guns. So he had this whole, like, he was an older dude and he had like money. So he was able to pay musicians to, just chime in or just record with him and go on the road with him and do all of this stuff. And I was there for rehearsals, and I was there filming and photographing their performances. And this takes me, like, watching this takes me back to like reality. Like, this is rock and roll in the shittiest way possible. It's not like, the way that you'd intended to be, but if you didn't have that and you never were Vince Neil or whatever, and I'm thinking like, that brain, that like rock and roll, like live for rock and all this shit, like it's just like that glam metal, like that mentality, which doesn't exist so much anymore. I mean, it's nostalgic now, which is fun, but like, it's such a heavy part of the movie, and it reminds me of people that actually live like this. And this guy decided to fucking make a movie about this shit.
Right,
and
exactly.
It's fucking awesome because it's so real for so many people that like this is your life, like kind of a has-been, but never was actually. But like they keep pushing, in a situation like his, he actually developed a fan base. He went on tours, he played festivals, he did this stuff. So like, this is clearly a very, very big part of his life. Probably more so than acting.
No shit.
Screenwriting, because maybe don't do that. Just stick to your rock and roll, bro.
Yeah.
I think it's fun to note too that this isn't like a punk rock kind of movie. It's glam metal on a budget. Like it's glam is all about the glitz and the shine, and
it's cheap
like
hair metal.
It's hair metal, but it's on a budget. So it's not like punk rock where it's supposed to be grimy. It's supposed to be like budgeted and shiny and all like Flash Gordon-y and shit. It's boy.
Especially in this day and age too, when you compare like what was then considered like hard music with like what we consider hard music now. Like I listen to a lot of metal, and like the shit that I'm listening to on a regular basis, like this stuff just looks so soft.
And it was supposed to be so hard back then. And it was so in your face and leather and fucking whatever, and fetishizing it with like whips and like bondage, and everybody's wearing leather, everybody's chest is out, like it's sweaty and it's metal and it's chains and stuff, but like it's really just glamorized bullshit, and like it's so fluffy. It's like it's just fluffy and cute and like love songs and stuff. Like nothing about it is really metal. It's just like it's just pretty.
And that's the test of time too. I think like Flappers and light jazz and stuff like had that same vibe and aesthetic to it at the time. It was like really hard and rough, and now we look at it and it's like even like our grandparents like think it's light, and that used to be like edgy.
It's so funny too because like metal has always had such a strong like satanic connotation as well, and like being the devil's music and the whole satanic panic, all the parents fretfully listening to their kids' Alice Cooper records backwards, trying to find decoded messages and stuff. And you look at something like this, and it's got that same kind of heavy metal satanic patina over it. They're literally fighting the devil in this movie, and it's just once again, it's so soft.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like out of most fads, glam rock has probably aged the worst out of any subgenre in the last 50 years.
Maybe.
It's the worst. Gosh, it's seriously like, it's not becoming at all. John Fasano directed Black Roses, which is another metal horror hybrid. And there were so many at the time, fun stuff, but like, I don't know if it paled in comparison, because this to me is more of a go-to. I think it has more permanence. But I thought Black Roses was fun, and it was like the musicians were like demons, and it's back to the devil, back to Satan.
Yeah.
And the overarching theme here has to do with the battle, with Satan.
Speaking of, let's work our way into that. Why don't we start with the Demon Muppets and then move our way in? Because oh boy, don't I love some Demon Muppets.
Honestly, the highlight of the movie for me.
The most endearing part of it, for me is the puppets. I don't think we should be under any illusions that the puppets look good. because they don't. They're fun and they're cute and they're charming, but they look very bad.
Oh God, and they sound terrible too. It's such a sad thing.
Yeah, it's so weird to like think that like the devil lives in this particular farmhouse in Ontario for some reason. But we mentioned it a little bit earlier, the like mouse cam, like always running along the floor, and we see multiple times that there are weird little miniature monsters, gremlin kind of things,
monster,
Muppets.
They're always very wet and drooling.
Some of them have troll hair.
Yeah,
Like troll doll hair, yeah.
It's comical. It's all funny. Like there's nothing scary about
no.
them.
and there's no kind of cohesive design ethos to any of the monsters. Like every time you see one, it's something completely new and different and unrelated to all of the others, and just like equally eclectic. There's no kind of connecting design that lets you think that these are all part of the same.
It's like, are they aliens? Are they demons? Like, it's such a strange.
You have no fucking clue until the end when Satan shows up. And
so Satan's minions should look a little bit more fucked up and scary.
Right, like if this is Hell's Army, I'm not so worried anymore. Like if this is like what I have to like look forward to when I'm deceased is if that's Satan's army, I think I'll be all right.
At one point, they straight up do like slapstick Muppet gags with them.
Yes.
Yeah, because John Michael Thor is like writing something and like he drops his pencil and it flies over his head.
So somebody just throws one of the puppets from off camera past his head.
Well, my favorite is right after that when they have the group of 5 Cyclops Muppets and they're all different. Like one has a little hairpiece and is smoking a cigarette.
Yeah, the one smoking a cigarette. What's that about?
The other one has a little knife.
There's also like a wolf man at one point. There's
a turkey monster.
Just a cooked turkey that has a mouth in the fridge that we see once and never again.
Which is great.
There's the weird like succubus woman demon in the basement that attacks the manager.
Yes, that was actually Thor's ex-wife.
Yes, I did see that on his Wikipedia page.
Now, ex-wife.
That was a cameo, which is not really a cameo. It lasted like under 30 seconds. So his wife actually ran a magazine. I think it was like a booby porn magazine. And
like you do.
Her boobs are very much out there. Obviously it's all about their boobs. But yeah, that was her cameo, and that was a short-lived one. And then you wonder, like, why wasn't his wife playing his girlfriend?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
More interesting, but I guess she made a better 30-second demon.
Well, maybe that has something to do with the divorce.
Yeah, we can only speculate.
I don't know how long that lasted, though. I mean, I think they might have been married throughout the movie.
I was going to ask, like, ex-wife at the time?
Yeah, no, I think I'm pretty sure they were married at the time, which makes it even weirder that, like, his wife is in the movie, involved with the production, but there's a lengthy sex, quote-unquote, sex scene with him and another woman.
I think she's pretty open-minded, though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess she is.
I would think so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if she has a booby magazine, most likely.
I think she's down. All the fun stuff.
Yeah, and then there's also the little boy that we see from the very beginning of the movie. He shows up again at one point, also as a weird demon thing.
I love the score.
For some reason.
I love the score at that part. It is absolute nonsense. Like it's
Casio preset.
Yeah. Just like super long delays. There's one bit where like Ben, you think you thought it was over, and then it comes in with another and then stops again.
Yeah.
And like they keep seeing this boy around the house, and none of them seem like overtly concerned by it, more just curious. Like, hey,
it's a boy.
Hey, what's this little boy doing at this house we're staying at in the middle of nowhere that's not immediately off the highway that you can see in the background?
Secluded.
Like what's he doing? What's he doing here?
So many questions, so many questions.
Just the reactions in general. I love how delayed they are. Like every time there's a demon reveal, it takes the person who's being attacked a good 8 seconds or so to realize there's a demon in front of them. I love it. Yeah, it's great.
And then to realize that someone's actually missing from their group. Like, oh, where's this person? The married couple, when the wife is killed. And then I don't think that she shows up to their next practice, and all of a sudden everybody's just dancing, having a great time, and then she's just not there.
Yeah, no one's concerned.
Well, they're very blasé about people disappearing in general. Like, near the end, you have the two left at the dinner table by themselves, and they're just like, well, they must have brought the van and took everyone to town while we were gone.
While we were in the shower, our manager came back and picked up everybody else and took them into town. Like, what? Why? We do find out why, and I think it's time to get into that.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the best part of the movie by far is the last like 15 minutes. The final showdown.
Really?
Countdown.
We accept the challenge.
We take on the challenge. Yes, that's right. We accept the challenge. We accept the challenge. John, let us know what's going on.
Well, he
And
does.
This is when the shit show really hits the fan.
Yes.
Yeah, why don't you lead us into it, Janette? Why don't you?
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, the fan.
Well, I mean, all the while, all these characters are just forms. They're not real, right? So then the showdown with Satan, Beelzebub, you know, John has this very awesome, like, confrontation with the demon that doesn't really look scary. It doesn't look like anything that you would ever associate Satan with.
No, it looks terrible.
Even now.
It's a big alien puppet.
Yeah, just poorly done. Not scary at all.
You
And-
gotta love the transition where it's the wife and she says they're all dead, I'm dead, and then instead of just doing like a crossfade where she is replaced by the demon, towards the end of the crossfade, the camera pans down.
No,
and you
she
see her.
goes
falls.
down.
Oh, it doesn't pan. She just
No,
drops
she just
out
drops
of the frame.
down out of frame.
Wow. Amazing. Honestly. Honestly.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It
So,
escalates so quickly in that final 15, 20-minute confrontation.
That's it. Like, you watch the movie just to get to that final showdown, final moments of insanity, and that's when, you know, you get to see Thor almost naked again, and, you know, back to his vanity project, and he had time to sit in the hair and makeup chair and make his hair fluffier and bigger and more robust, and then he's wearing those tight little leather panties.
It's time to fight Satan.
The
with
spiked
my
leather
fists.
panties, yeah.
Yeah, the transformation sequence to that is great too.
And then you learn that he's actually the archangel, and that all of the characters in the movie were just forms invited that were pretty much inviting the demon in to have that final, you know, showdown with him. Yeah, so now it's Beelzebub and then, you know, the archangel, and he's the intercessor.
Yeah, that intercessor, that's right.
He's the intercessor. You know that there's a sequel to this movie, and it's Intercessor, 2005. You're gonna have to watch that.
Oh my God. Is Thor in it?
Yes, 2005. So it's
Yes.
not that long ago. Yeah.
Yes,
Oh my
let's
God.
watch that,
Excellent.
please.
Excellent.
What kind of shape is he in 2005?
Oh, not good.
Oh,
He had a tumultuous time, and he had actually a bunch of health issues that
you don't say.
that just came up, and I think
The 80s
he's
will
like
do that.
blind from one eye. He obviously isn't a bodybuilder anymore, and he's a heavy set guy now, and he's kind of frumpy, and he wears like his khakis, and now he wears like khakis and like t-shirts, and he's far from that persona that he lived so well. He lived to be so well, and so Intercessor. I think that's next on your watch list.
Oh,
after this,
absolutely.
Yeah,
we'll just rock your brain a little bit more.
That's
We'll have to
isn't that
have you
something
back
else?
for that one.
'Cause-
Yeah.
We want to be friends, right?
You got to give it to John Micklethor for, yes, his project, it was most definitely a vanity project, but there is something to be a little vain over, like when it comes to his stature. Like the man is super well built. Like at least
he was a body.
he showed up for the part like fucking ripped.
He leans into it for sure.
And I think that really helps that sequence from being outright depressing and instead endearing. Otherwise, that would have been kind of unfortunate if he was like standing there saying he was like a literal golden god and like schlubby. Like,
he looks he looks godlike, I guess. If God is
godlike, he's like a metal rock god. He's a Viking metal rock god.
Yeah, if God
even with a low budget, he's selling it.
The whole film by that point almost feels like a slap in the face because they just revealed that none of the events leading up to this final confrontation mattered at all.
Well, my favorite part of it is it reveals that the whole shower scene was John Micklethor just pretending to have sex with himself.
That's right. They're all figments of they're all like thought form projections that he's created. So that means that he's fucking nobody.
He needs to get a better imagination. Yeah, there's nothing. It was all a figment of your imagination, his imagination, everybody's imagination. So when you think about it, you're just like, what a waste. Like, you could have at least done something. Like, those scenes that you think of as like, oh, this didn't make any sense, it's out of place. It's like, it's all out of place. Nothing makes sense. Nothing is supposed to be there.
But then, at the end, after he's defeated the devil, the last scene is him going to a cemetery and standing over some graves and saying, I have avenged all of your deaths. So who's he avenging? Who's he avenging? I don't know. What? Were they real or not? What?
Pick a fucking lane!
Which is it?
Pick a lane!
There's no rhyme or reason.
Yikes.
Just work out and think about it.
That whole fight scene with
just
him
one of a kind.
It's so sad. It's just like this huge buff rock Jesus weekly tussling with a big fake rubber puppet.
Well, my favorite part is at one point his eyes start glowing for no
but the effect is offset from his actual eyes, so they didn't even bother to line it up.
That last scene is definitely why you must watch this movie. And you could just skip to that part, but what's the point in that, right? Like, if you're gonna dip your toe into shit, might as well just dip your entire fucking body into shit.
Oh yeah,
and then just revel in it. Say, okay, I did it. I feel good about this. And I've learned nothing today, but that's fine. Well, no, I guess you have some takeaways if you start to think about him and where he comes from, his influence, and him again, and just back to him and back to his boobs and back to his ideas and back to his career and then back to him.
It's a film
because it's really all about him.
Yeah, it's a film that becomes fascinating because of the enigma behind it. Like it's not interesting because of the events of the movie. It's interesting because you need to know more about this bizarre man creature.
And that's what really makes this movie like special, I think, for me, as we were talking about earlier. Like, why do you like this movie? Why have you seen it so many times? It's because I became infatuated with finding out who is this guy and why did he do this and why did he he wrote, he produced all this stuff, and he was actually in Zombie Nightmare, Roger Corman's Zombie Nightmare.
Oh, really?
The same year as this.
Same year. They were both released 87. Yeah, 87. So he was in Zombie Nightmare, and then he starred in his own Rock and Roll Nightmare.
It's like, screw zombies.
Yeah,
We have a theme, huh?
I see John Fasano also wrote Zombie Nightmare and was one of the directors but is uncredited. So I guess Thor and John Fasano they were boys or something. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe he was just inspired by his role in the movie. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, really. Nothing really does. I guess Thor does make sense, and, you know, his body rock makes sense, and his bad ideas make sense to some extent, and his gusto and his undying need for this love of what he does and his rock and, you know, his movie and his persona that he has pushed for so long, that kind of makes sense in a very senseless world, right? The movie is completely senseless, but then a lot of it is, I mean, like tying into like his experience and why he did it and all this stuff. But like the good takeaway is that I feel like it's unintentional comedy. Kind of like in the beginning, I suppose, with like Tommy was so I keep going back to Tommy because it wasn't an intentional comedy, but it became a hilarious movie that you just have to watch. And the Rock and Roll Nightmare, and then thinking about his life, kind of is an unintentional comedy, which makes it really fun to watch.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the comparison to The Room, and I think
And Troll 2 as well.
Yeah, the secret to it is they're just so earnestly made.
The sincerity.
Yet the outcome is not what they were necessarily going for.
Yeah, and then there's the visions of grandeur and like this rock god kind of attitude and this like big, like, you know, you're just so fueled by like yourself and like this extreme self-confidence, which we drives people to do so much more. And it's like, man, the psychological aspect of it to me is very, very, very entertaining.
I agree. I think that's what makes the film worth watching, is using it as an opportunity to learn something about Thor, because it really tells you more about him than anything else, because like you have to start thinking like, why did he make these very specific decisions, like to what end, and how swollen is his ego to see the finished product and think like, yeah, this is good. Like I'm proud of this. I did this, you know?
Exactly. And if you don't, I think it's better if you don't know about Thor before entering the movie experience, because then you have like a clean slate and there's no judgment. Like you're just watching this movie and everything is terrible. But then you kind of have a more sympathetic view after you learn more about him. And you're like, okay, well, these things are okay to all of a sudden because he's just really trying really hard to do this really cool thing that he just keep pushing, and it's like, dude, you know, at some point, why in the fuck do you stop? Like, you know, I don't know. I guess some people just can't, but it's all good. I think I'm glad that he made the movie. It's one of my favorite movies, and I'm glad that you maybe enjoyed it or not.
I definitely enjoyed it. I don't know if I would be readily drawn back to this movie. If anything, I feel like I would just jump to the fight at the end, because there's so much filler in the beginning of the movie. You could cut this whole thing down to about 20 entertaining minutes, you know?
I think the secret is this is the kind of film you'd want to play during a party, generally, because there's so much downtime. You know, if you're chatting with your friends, you know, like browsing, you know, Reddit or, you know, whatever, like while it's going on, I think it's a lot more manageable. But
this is a party movie for sure. This is just, or hanging out with your friends, and like you can, you know, hang out and then talk and then engage and then, oh, look at that. Oh, what the fuck was that? Or what? And, you know, that becomes fun. But like, if you're going to sit there and seriously watch this, you're not going to want to sit there and seriously watch it. It's definitely a party movie.
Yes.
Definitely a rock and roll party movie.
I don't think in that context it'd be fun to put on.
Watching it, you can watch the documentary and you can learn more about Thor, because his music videos are amazing.
Oh yeah.
And the true meat of this movie is the meat that Thor brings via his
the literal man meat
and his character that he has created, and all of his rock god fucking power. that's it. That's the meat of it. And that's just what it is. He's worked hard for that body. He's got to show it off. He's worked hard for that persona. He's not going to stop. And that is very obvious.
It is the meat. You're right about that. Well, around here, we like to round out our discussions by rating the film out of 5 stars. Half stars are okay. Just a earnest rating of your enjoyment, completely subjective. Since you're our guest, Janette, why don't we start with you? Set the bar for us.
Oh man, I mean, that's kind of a tough one because I do like really great movies. I guess within the context of talking about a movie that's, so bad that it ends up to be enjoyable and entertaining, and there's so much to it that is so honest, as we've mentioned before, as with any exploitation movie or B movie, that's just kind of like, what happens. Like, there's an honesty behind it, which I love, and I think that it's so cheesy and ridiculous and over the top and poorly done that as far as like my poor meter goes, I give it like a 5 on like on just being bad and like fun and like satiating like that metal horror genre, which it's always supposed to be campy. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to make you laugh. It's supposed to make you say why. Like what budget is $50,000? Seriously, like, your friends are in it. Like, you do the best that you can. You have terrible monsters and, some really bad ideas, but then you make it work. So on a scale of effort and entertainment, I'm going to give it a 5 because I do feel very connected to this movie. And don't judge me. And if you have to judge me,
no judgment here.
then,
Absolutely
it's fine, but we can... I really like bad shit, you guys.
Bad shit is great. You don't have anything to be ashamed of.
Did Troll 2 get like a golden from us?
Yeah, we gave Troll 2 unanimous 5s across the board for the same reason. We rate based on our experience and our enjoyment, But Ben, why don't you give us your rating next?
I thought this movie was a trip, to say the least. Whether it was the absurd demon puppets, the extended driving sequences, and way too long sequences in general, the over-the-top sex sequences, or the absolutely insane third act. This movie was an enjoyable ride, to say the least. I don't think it's a good movie, but it's a fun movie. Since it was so fun, I'll give it a 3. In terms of quality, it's not, great, but in terms of enjoyment, it's definitely up there.
Cleveland?
Yeah, when this movie is on or off, depending on your definition, it's on, like when it is so bad it's good, it truly is that. When it's off during the driving sequences at the end, which is, borderline, essentially just stock footage that they've created, it's pretty boring. It's pretty rough, like getting through those points. They hold on shots throughout the film far too long. There's a good number of other movies we've covered on the podcast, like it's like Silent Night, Deadly Night. Like a vast portion of the film is filler shots.
Yeah, it can just be straight up removed.
That it's gonna lose a star or 2 for me on that. But man, when it hits though, like that reveal at the end, where they were all just his buddies were all just shadow entities, and he was projecting that towards this puppet Satan. Is Satan hurling the ninja flesh starfish at him that suckle his nips, like just so much.
He wasn't like fighting anything really. He was just like kind of bringing it onto him.
Right, he was catching them and then latching them to his nipples.
Catches them and then he pretends so hard to fight.
Oh yeah, and like him ripping it apart was so funny. Like yeah, like when it's on, it's so funny. I'm gonna give it 3.5. I think because those slow bits, again, great party movie. I think because
Yes, it's
you
a
can
great
just get all your
movie
friends
to get
together,
drunk with friends and watch.
and you can just be like, oh, guys, hold on, this bit's really good, and then like stop talking for a second, watch that bit, and then get back to chatting.
My guess was a 3.5 across the board for you dudes, for sure. I was like, it's going to be a 3.5 because it's not a 1, but it's definitely not a 5.
Oh, it's definitely not a 1. Like it's got a huge enjoyability factor, and I'd be happy to share this with more people. Like absolutely, I'm hedging 4, but those sequences were just a little too slow, little too much filler.
I think I need to qualify mine a little bit first because I very much enjoyed our experience of watching this movie.
Yeah, the movie broke you more than anyone.
Yeah, I was
Crazy because normally it's me who can't stand the lack of logic and gets mad at it.
I was hollering at the movie a lot, but at the same time, I was really enjoying it. I don't know if I would ever put this movie on to watch it by myself, but
why would you?
Right, but if I was with friends or something, be like, man, y'all want to see a train wreck of a film, it would be a good one to put on. I enjoyed my experience a lot. I'm gonna give the film a 2 out of 5 because goddamn, the filler stuff is fucking boring. but
Brutal.
Man, the highs are so high. The 2 stars are for the last 15 minutes alone, man. It's that shit is so wild. I really had a great time. But between the 4 of us, that will give Rock and Roll Nightmare an average of 3.4 out of 5.
There you go, almost.
So your prediction was very, very close. So right on.
I think I brought that average up though, which is fine.
You did. You boosted it, but I think that's okay. It was your choice for us to watch, and I'm very, very glad you suggested it.
Same.
This was it was a fun movie to watch, and it has made for some really fun conversation as well.
Most definitely.
I really hope that you can talk nonsense and think nonsense for the next 24 hours.
Yeah, I love it's really nice to every now and then just be able to break down a dumpster fire, and just figure out what's going on there. What are all of these bits of trash that are burning,
Absolutely. And the takeaway is that, and you can have a fun party and then just, have your friends over and share some terrible shit with them. If everybody has a good laugh out of this, thumbs up. We are winning.
100%.
Party, man. Metal party.
Metal party, man. We live to rock.
And we accept the challenge. We did accept the challenge. You guys accepted the challenge. Thank you very much for watching this movie.
Well, we were
thank
happy
you.
to
Yeah,
accept
Sorry. Very, very sorry.
Thank you for presenting us with this challenge for us to accept. It was a lot of fun. So, Ben, what is the film that we're talking about next week? I don't know the title.
I've been so excited for this next one. It's called Dial Code Santa Claus, also known as Deadly Games. It's a Christmas movie.
'Tis the season.
Say.
I believe it's French. It came out a year before Home Alone, but it's essentially the outcome of if you threw Home Alone, Rambo, and a bunch of blood and guts into the blender, turned it to maximum. Yeah, it's going to be a crazy, crazy trip. I'm so excited to talk about it.
I have never ever heard of this film. This was one of your curations, Ben, so I have no idea what we're getting into, but I'm pretty excited, honestly, from the description.
Wait, you say it's comparable to Home Alone. Is it starring a kid?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Yes.
So lots of blood and guts?
Yes.
But
Okay.
it's before Home Alone.
It came out a year before Home Alone, so it's really, truly the original Home Alone.
Well, we'll be unpacking that next week. But before we all sign off, I think it's time for a word from our sponsor. Cleveland, who is our sponsor for this week?
You know what? I want to tell you guys, I think we've finally made it. I think it's time that our audience knew just how well our podcast is doing.
We made it
this
forever
week's
ago,
sponsor is Coca-Cola. They've finally found us. It's high time. So I just want you guys to know that we are now verified and legitimate as a podcast because Coca-Cola is definitely actually our sponsor, and I could not be more honest right now. It is a true fact.
Because this is an audio medium, the audience can't see that we are all holding cans of Coca-Cola in such a way that the label is clear so we can see it. Coca-Cola, notable sponsor of the Pod People and also John Mickle-Thor's Rock and Roll Nightmare.
That was like never ending. I'm so glad that you caught that.
What was that? There's no way.
I mean, it was them trying to like legitimize themselves, and I found it incredibly endearing. Like the idea of them sitting around being like, "Yeah, we'll make it look like we actually have a Coca-Cola sponsorship." So delightful.
Maybe
that's beyond words, really. I mean, just watch the movie now and just get to that part.
Maybe they thought that if they proudly displayed the Coke label, that Coca-Cola would see the movie and be like, "Wow, what a great movie! Let's give you some money for advertising for us."
Plays it in different ways, and like, oh, here it is, and he was actually writing like musical notes while he was writing music. He was writing musical notes because he's very smart.
Yes.
And then he's got his Coke can next to him.
He even picks it up so you can read the label. It's amazing.
He turns it when he sets it down so the label is perfectly facing the camera.
Gotta remind him what it is after all.
Wow, I'm giving you guys a big fucking hug right now because that was awesome. That was fucking great.
It was like during that scene, I was like, okay, I know what our sponsor is going to be this week.
This is bad, yeah. Okay, so.
Well,
that didn't work out, did it?
Well, if you like listening to the show, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star rating and a nice review. 5 stars like Rock and Roll Nightmare, 5 stars like John Mickle-Thor, 5 stars for living for rock. You can also follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod or at letterboxd.com/PodPeoplePod for a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those episodes. You can find me on Twitter at Deep State Ozzy.
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
And I'm occasionally tweeting for at Lightarc Studio as we continue to work up our wonderful, dark, and spooky indie RTS RPG game, It Stares Back. Go check it out. You know where to find it. Just Google it. It's on Steam.
All right, well, Janette, do you have anything that you would like to plug?
My Instagram is Viral Video Miami. I moved from Miami to Winston-Salem, North Carolina. That I have a shitload of VHS tapes for sale, and I do trades and swaps, and I have a killer collection of vintage movie zines for all you zine heads. So yeah, Viral Video Miami. That's all.
All right.
It sounds extremely fun. I want to check some of those out.
Well, thank you so much for
rad.
joining us, Janette. This was a lot of fun.
Indeed.
Right on. Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting yourself through the torture, which was actually a fun torture, but yes.
Well, we're known to be somewhat masochistic around here, and I can promise you that we have endured way worse on this podcast.
Yes.
So this was it was a bad movie, but it was a delight, and it was a delight having you on as well. And you're welcome to join us anytime, and feel free to recommend us more weird, deep cut, stupid, terrible movies.
Please.
Absolutely. I hope that y'all spend a nice evening wearing your tight leather undies.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Always have mine on, just in
And I hope
case.
that you frizz up that hair real big and just have a good old time and live for rock.
I'm putting on more eyeliner right now. Well, until next time, thank you for listening. We are the Pod People, and we're getting ready to fucking rock on out of here.
Yeah!